Welcome to this tutorial on Node.js. Today we're going to be covering the FS module in reading files. We're going to see how we can use the readFileSync method, the synchronous form to reading files. We're also going to see the asynchronous forms from the readFile method, both callback and promise-like. And we're also going to see how we can read streams with the createReadStream method. A few things to remember when reading files. You want to specify the encoding. It's usually going to be UTF-8 because the data is going to be in form of a buffer. You can use the toString to convert the buffer into a string, and you want to try to avoid using the synchronous methods because Node.js is single-threaded. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's start with the readFileSync method. I have a file right here, file.txt, that has some content in it. I'm going to use the readFileSync method to read from that file. Okay, now that we have our readFile method set up, let's test it out to see if we get the data from the file. If I run this program right here, I have the content from the file, file.txt. Next, let's see how we can read from the same file asynchronously. I'll use the callback version of the readFile method first. The second argument of the readFile method is the callback function, which takes array and data parameters. Okay, so we have our readFile method set up, which is now asynchronous. It takes as arguments the file path, the encoding, and a callback function with array and data parameters. If I run the the program above, we get the output of the file.txt. To use a promise to read from a file, add the promise to the end of the FS module. Once you have that set up, you can use the readFile method as you would any other promise. Okay, so we set up our readFile method, which now returns a promise. To consume the promise, we use the .chainable then function, and we'll also use the catch function to catch any errors. Okay, so first we imported the readFile method from the FS module. We're going to be using the promise version. We specified the file path and the encoding type, and because our readFile method returns a promise, we can consume the promise using the then function. If I run this file right here above, you see I get the same content of the file as before. Okay, so let's see how we can use the createReadStream method to read from the same file. There are a few ways to do this, but the easiest is to use the on method inherited from the event emitter. Let's use createReadStream to read from file.txt. Okay, so we set up our createReadStream method. We provided the file path and the encoding. Now let's go ahead and set up our data and error handler. Okay, so we have our createReadStream method set up. We also registered the data event so we can read the data from the file. If I run this program here, you see that we now have the content from the file as we did before. Okay, so we saw how we can read files. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can write files.